Welcome to the Ayzenberg Group webinar on the EMV, Earned Media Value Index. I'm Vincent Juarez, Principal of Ayzenberg's Ion and Media Divisions, and I'm joined today by two colleagues who are immersed in EMVs from a reporting and campaign management perspective. Before we start, let's do a quick intro and overview of what they do.
I'm Robin Boitos, Director of Analytics at Ayzenberg. I oversee reporting, analytics, and insights for all of the Ayzenberg Group.
And I'm Francesca Forgash, Group Account Director at Ion. I'm responsible for working with clients to manage the execution of influencer campaigns and ensuring all deliverables and benchmarks, including EMVs, are met.
Starting with the pricing from auction-based social platforms, we looked at 5 key verticals: gaming, automotive, beauty fashion, entertainment, and consumer electronics. We went into platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube and set up campaigns to get actual real-world pricing data on actions that can be bought on a paid media basis. So for example, on Twitter, you can bid on engagements.
Yep.
On Facebook, you can bid on page likes. And on YouTube, you can bid on views. So we pulled these values on a monthly basis, and we know there's a reasonable range that you would place a bid on these actions, so we factored in both low and high suggested bids. Each of these results were included as separate comps.
Yep.
But we didn't just stop there.
No, we didn't.
There are more ways than programmatic pricing to pay for social actions, and that's through high quality creative from agencies or internal social teams within your companies. We pulled in years of paid social and media campaign data as additional comps. We looked at the resulting earned media actions from those campaigns and determined how much every action cost.
But, okay, so that aside though, don't we pay for earned media through our paid campaigns?
That's a great question, Fran. You pay for specific media actions, so
Okay.
things like views, clicks, and some engagements. But the additional social actions that result from paid activity is classified as earned or added value media.
Got it.
So it's an added layer of engagement beyond what you paid for.
Okay.
You can apply the EMV to those values.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I got that. But I do also understand you added some organic social campaign comps. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that in a bit more detail?
Correct. We went through a similar exercise for our organic social campaigns. Even if paid media costs don't apply, there are still managed service fees that go into creating content. So organic content isn't 100% free. So basically, there are man hours that go into creating that content. So we used a similar process of using campaign costs to derive a value for each social action and added those as comps to our analysis.
That's pretty awesome. It's definitely interesting, and it's just amazing how in-depth, actually.
A lot of work went into this.
A lot, yeah. So, all right, so you also mentioned earlier about incorporating other publications into this study. So what was the reasoning behind that?
Yes, we did in fact include other publications as comps. Many publications derive a value using their agency data, or they came up with a different methodology entirely.
Got it.
It's important not to throw out those other studies because there's some value to seeing how others evaluate the EMV. It just helps us determine a normalized view to create an industry standard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to add to that, I just want to reemphasize that these values are in fact baselines. We put a tremendous amount of effort to ensure that they are as stable as possible.
Definitely.
But Fran, as you stated earlier, we welcome any additional data sources to include in the future version of this comp analysis.
Yeah, again, very iterative.
Yes, thank you, Vincent. This is definitely a starting point and will normalize even more as time goes on. So to tie all of these pieces together, we evaluated all of our comps, threw out any major outliers, and factored in whether our comps were engagement focused or funnel focused, and applied weights to the comps accordingly. So basically, we put a lot of thought into every single rate in this card.
That was a lot,
Yeah.
a lot of thought. So, obviously a lot of hard work went into coming up with these values. Let's dive a little bit more into specific social platforms, and just the actions to provide additional context on assigned values. Let's start maybe with video view metrics for each of our platforms.
All right, let's start off with YouTube.
Good starting point.
YouTube views are one of the easiest to benchmark because of the wealth of historical data, but also because of YouTube's programmatic RTV pricing and TrueView's cost per completed view counting methodology. Now, TrueView typically ranges from about a 6 to 16 cent cost per view range, depending on targeting, timing, demand for specific placements, and a few other factors.
Regions, yeah.
Exactly. But based on the premium nature of influencer content, we felt that a 12-cent CPV benchmark was actually a good starting point. Now, we use that same CPV benchmark for a platform like Vine, but we take an extra step to equivalize loops to views because we don't believe that one loop equals a completed view. In this case, we created the conversion factor, 5 loops to a view. So this essentially makes it equivalent to a 30-second spot and approximates a value based on a completed view. Now, platforms like Snapchat are a little trickier because it's not sold on a CPV basis and there's not a lot of data to actually create this comp against. So we actually reached out to our friends at Snapchat and got some of their input to help us come up with the initial CPV, and we actually found that their CPV is lower than the YouTube benchmark. But since Snapchat views are consumed differently in that there's an inherent sense of urgency, in the moment engagement, that's more akin to, say, traditional live sports viewing, we actually made an adjustment upwards because we think that the premium nature of that kind of experience is similar to the YouTube CPV, and so we thought that that was a good starting point.
That makes sense. It's real time. It's really kind of, you have to kind of evaluate it based on that. Okay, so what about Facebook and the other platforms?
I thought you'd never ask. So
Can't ignore
Facebook,
those guys.
Instagram, and Twitter, based on our study, we're about 3 to 6 times higher than the YouTube benchmark that we use. However, like Vine, we used an adjustment factor to normalize the views and an accounting methodology because, as many of you know, views from these platforms are based on a 3-second dwell time versus YouTube's cost per completed view methodology for counting. So we actually felt that the 12-cent cost per view was more appropriate. Now, like we discussed, we may get some backlash from the various platforms for adjustments, but we really felt the need to normalize the data based on different counting methodologies and use YouTube as a standard to compare against, at least for this first round of the study.
That makes sense.
So I guess what we can say is let the feedback begin.
Yes.
So we can collectively improve our methodology in the future.
Keep it coming.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now, that's a good transition into the other EMVs. So Robin, do you want to talk about those?
Absolutely. Starting with Facebook, we'll be talking about cost per click, cost per each engagement, and cost per page like. Starting with the cost per click, this is an action you can buy through auction bidding on Facebook. For consecutive months, we pulled network pricing for the 5 key segments I mentioned earlier. And as a reminder, those are automotive, beauty, fashion, gaming, entertainment, and consumer electronics. We then pulled the actual cost per click for Ayzenberg's paid media campaigns and added this as one comp. Then we calculated cost per click for our organic Ayzenberg campaigns and determined about 25% of posts are funnel focused with the goal of actually obtaining a click. So we put a little less weight on this comp. Finally, we added in prior published studies as comps. So we took the average of all of these and came up with 15 cents cost per click. As for engagements, you can buy based on CPE, and that stands for cost per engagement. And you can buy these through auction bidding. They define an engagement as likes, comments, and shares. So this is the price averaged across each of our 5 key verticals. We included this mostly as a reference point. However, not all engagements are created equal. Some engagements take significantly more effort than others and should be valued differently. So moving into cost per comment, likes, and shares. You cannot purchase these individually on Facebook. And most paid campaigns are funnel driven with the purpose of click-throughs. So we weighted more heavily on the organic campaigns and other published studies that incorporate their agency data. The least valuable action here is a like, which makes sense. It's quick and easy to like a post. But however, it's still valuable because it made people stop and think about your brand. The more valuable engagements that take significantly more effort are comments and shares. Comments came out to $1.75 per comment. Now, shares are the most valuable because they add exposure to your content to a wider audience. And this resulted in a valuation of $1.93. Finally, cost per page like. You can buy this through auction bidding on Facebook, so we did the same process as for clicks by pulling network pricing. We also factored in organic campaigns. There's definitely a value in producing organic content that makes someone decide to like your page. There was just something about that content that was compelling enough that they wanted to consume it on a regular basis. But again, the price of producing that content isn't free. There are man hours involved to create a post. So we factored this in as one comp. And finally, many publications have shied away from providing a value proposition on this metric, so there are no further comps on page likes. Interesting stuff, right, guys?
Definitely
Awesome.
interesting. So, Robin, that was really great information.
No,
Thank
that's
you.
great.
Thank
That's
you
awesome.
for that. So, can you tell us a little bit more about other platforms like Twitter?
Yes, so let's move on to Twitter. The values we'll be focusing on here are cost per each engagement and cost per follower. Starting with CPE, again, this is cost per engagement that can be purchased through auction bidding on Twitter. We've included this simply as a reference. We recommend focusing more on the individual engagement types since not all are created equal. Now for favorites, it's a tougher task to get as many favorites on Twitter as you would on Facebook, making a favorite worth a bit more on Twitter. Twitter is just this big fire hose of data.
Yes.
People tweet more frequently than on Facebook, and many people, like myself, are just creepy lurkers reading through news, celebrity tweets, and
We all
friends'
do
content.
it. We all do it.
And I read through them quickly because they're short and sweet and I can skim. So getting someone to stop and favorite means they took an extra second to fully consume your content and engage. So this value came out to $1.49. For retweets, again, this gives your brand increased exposure, making it the most valuable metric at $1.67. And replies, these fall squarely in between favorites and retweets at $1.58. We use third-party publications and organic campaigns as the comps for our individual engagements. Finally, for followers, you can buy this through auction bidding, so we added this to our publications and organic campaign comps. This came out to $2.39.
So, moving on in terms of working with some of the brands, we've worked with several large brands on content and influencer-based campaigns across many verticals. These provided the perfect showcase to test the updated EMV metrics. So I want to kind of dig a little bit more into that and just, talking about different campaigns by vertical. One campaign involved a client in the travel sector. This involved actually aligning the brand with a top-tier influencer to bring to life travel tips and experiences through a travel vlog video series. The campaign generated over 5 videos and about 66 total content pieces across YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. So based on all that, the EMV index actually drove over $143,000 in earned media value. So it's
Pretty good.
I remember that one. That was a real fun one.
It was a lot of fun, actually. It was great to, again, go back to your earlier point, Robin, of just seeing how audiences were reacting and how they were responding so well, to that content. Another campaign, switching gears, involved one of the largest players in the consumer electronics space. The influencer content strategy revolved basically around kind of a slice of life brand stories through the lens of their products. So very authentic. The campaign resulted in over 11 videos, dozens of Instagram and blog pieces, and drove over $248,000 in earned media.
That's even better.
So yeah, and it was a lot. It was very in depth. It was very layered, and just really providing that deep dive look into their experiences with the product. So the next client was in the gaming vertical. It involved one of our just top comic book franchises that we all know near and dear. We worked with top-tier influencers to create content across multiple social platforms. To date, the campaign has generated in excess of 200,000 earned media accesses and $180,000 in earned media value.
Now there you have it, insights into our EMV analytic journey and the
Awesome.
real-world practical application of the EMV index.
And, as promised, here's the info on where to get the report.